Hey guys, Stephen Benoon here with Israeli News Live, and I wanted to share something with you. I was going through some of the comments on the last video I did, the one I did on teaching, and I saw where several of you had mentioned that the testimonies that I share are something that really bless you, and I am so happy to hear that. And so I decided to share one that's very unique. It's very personal, but it's very unique because I have been visited before. I just say an angel. I don't know what type of angel. You know, people say angel of the Lord stuff. I don't know about all that. But I'm going to share that with you. And it was much earlier in life. It's happened down through my life on different occasions. And kind of what prompted this too was last night I was on with Daniel Oat again, and Colonel Greg was supposed to join us, but his computer got messed up. We're hoping to have Colonel Greg over with us on Israeli News Live before long. But I was asked, have I ever seen aliens before personally? And of course the answer is no. And but then the issue came up about angels, and yes, but it's always been the same one in my life. It's never been a different one, even to the point of seeing him. I've seen him more than once. He is, in fact, after seeing him, anytime he's ever spoken to me, where I hear it audibly, I'm always aware that it's him, because I know him by his voice. So I figured I would start with one of the earliest moments that ever happened in life, and I was a young man at the time. But by the way, before I get into that, be sure to subscribe to the channel here. Click that notification bell. In fact, if you're subscribed and you're not getting the notifications, and you did click the notification bell, I have a feeling it's because YouTube has removed you from the channel. So you might want to, even if you have to unsubscribe and resubscribe and re-click that notification bell, we're kind of suppressed a lot on what we put out. And another thing too, hopefully later this evening I'm going to be able to do 2 more videos. One, I'm going to be dealing with the OWN, just reverse that, okay? I have to say that because those are things that kind of push down the views. And little something that I know about on that. I do need to do another update on Patreon about Planet 9. We'll call it Planet 9 here. Some things that I'm aware of on that, just to kind of update you on those things there. But I really got a teaching. I'm really wanting to go and hit, not hit, but tackle Romans 11. That's another one. Those of you that come here for the news and stuff, look, that don't like the teaching part of it, you know, I want to say I'm sorry, but in a way I'm not, because this whole channel never was a news channel to begin with. We just kind of evolved into one. But I do want to keep covering news for you guys as well. And the reason why I put some of these teachings here is because most people, that's where they all started. They didn't start at Danoon Institute on YouTube. They started here, so that's why I'm sharing these things here. Anyway, let's get into this testimony here, because like I said, I think it will bless many of you just to hear this. Back early in life, I got married originally when I was about, oh gosh, how old was I? About 20, 21 years old, something like that. And my wife, we had a little boy, probably a couple of years after we got married. And he is now getting close to 40 years old, in fact. He is a history teacher, and just started, I think he's fixing to graduate with his master's too, because after he got his bachelor's, went on to get his master's. Now he's getting ready to go do his doctorate level. Very, very brilliant young man, and certainly love him. He's been with me his entire life, though. Even after me and his mother went our separate ways, he ended up being with me. And that's part of what this is going to be about. And I don't think I've shared this testimony before. If I did, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I'm just sharing it again. But what happened was his mother and I, we were only married a couple of years. And I don't know for sure what really caused that downfall. I kind of feel like later it was postpartum depression. And it was something that, of course, being young people, we just did not know what was going on. But she wasn't a bad person or anything like that. You know, we got married when we were very young, and she started going through a lot of regrets, a lot of depression and stuff like that. And, you know, so the marriage began to fall apart. And when it did, she went, we were living at that time down in South Florida, and she came back up to the North Florida area where her family was from. And she took our son with her at the time. And, you know, which generally that happens a lot of times. Now, initially she wasn't planning on doing that, but then she had a change of heart. She took Nick with her, and he came back up to the north part of Florida. Well, it really, really devastated my heart that happened. Of course, the whole issue was devastating, but I didn't, you know, I didn't want it to be a contentious situation either, but her leaving with him really bothered me a lot. And I began to really pray about it, and I was like, gosh, you know, I said, Lord, I said, I can understand my wife leaving, you know, with what she's going through. I may not get it, but I can live with that. But I just have a really difficult time with not being with him. And so I was really sincerely praying about that. And then I got up one morning, and of course where we lived on Hutchinson Island, and I worked for I don't want to go into where I actually worked at that time, but anyway, I lived on Hutchinson Island there, and in the mornings there, I lived right across the street from the ocean, so you could walk down the beach and stuff, things like that. And I'm walking down the beach, and as I'm walking down the beach there, I come up to a boardwalk that wasn't far from where I lived, and there was a dove sitting on the post of that boardwalk. And when we were early married, we would always say, you know, if we saw 3 doves, we always said that represented our family, you know, her, me, and Nick. And so when I saw the dove there, you know, I thought, boy, that would be so nice to see 3. And so the little dove, as I walked up close to it, like doves, they're a very timid bird, he flew off that rail, and he flew down the rail a little further, and there was a second dove sitting on the rail. And he lands there with that second dove. And so I walked up, got up there to the main part of the boardwalk, and I started to walk down towards those 2 doves. And I said, well, that sure is nice, you know, to see 2. And then as I got close to them again, they're very timid. They flew right back down on the sand. And there were a few little areas there, you know, little patches here and there, but nothing big, nothing significant, very tiny. You know, they're spotted on the sand. And I'm watching them peck around in the sand. And so I stood there for a few minutes, and I was watching them as they were pecking around in the sand. And I'm looking everywhere for a 3rd dove, just so much hoping that there would be a 3rd dove. And at some point there, as I'm watching them, I hear someone speak to me, just like I'm talking to you now. I could hear them as plain as day, and it sounded like they were standing right behind me on my left shoulder, standing there. And the person that spoke said, take the shell from within your pocket and behold for a sign, cast it at the 2 doves. I'm sorry, he said, cast it at the 2 doves, and behold for a sign, there shall be a 3rd. Now, to kind of explain the shell issue real quick, as I was walking down the beach, I saw a little small conch shell, probably about the length of my hand, and it was kind of uniquely shaped. It didn't, I mean, it was a conch shell, obviously, but I don't know why it had the odd shape to it, but it had a very odd shape to it. And I remember when I picked it up that morning, I thought, wow, that's something that my son's mother would love. Be something like that, you know. So I picked it up, and I thought, okay, I'll give it to her. So I put it in my hip pocket, and just like you'd put your wallet in your pocket. And so I did that, and then as I'm going along, I, like I said, I heard this voice speak to me and say, take the shell from your pocket and behold for a sign, there shall be a third. I never took my eyes, and those two doves, I would say they were probably, as they were pecking in the sand, they were maybe 3 foot apart from each other. And as soon as I touched that shell, there stood a third dove right between the two of those. And he was just looking at me. And I'm like kind of blown away by the moment. I'm like, how did that just happen, right? But in my mind at the same time, I'm thinking, well, this voice just said, throw it at the two, and there'll be a third. So I took the shell out, and I threw it right there at those two doves, and it bounced right in between them. And normally you would think, and this is what I thought the sign's gonna have something to do with them flying away or something, right? Because I just threw a shell at them, like throwing a rock at them. I mean, it's big enough, the shell's nearly the size of these little doves. And when I did, the other two that were pecking in the stand, they stopped, they looked up at me, but they didn't fly. And I thought, that's strange. And I even said in my heart, I said, God, I don't understand this. Then I thought, well, maybe the way they fly maybe that's what I'm supposed to get. So I climbed down through the rail, because it wasn't that high up off the ground, the boardwalk, climbed through the rail. I walked right up to them. Now, mind you, those two original doves, anytime I come anywhere close to them, one would fly there. If I came down the boardwalk, they flew off, went down there to the sand. They wouldn't stick near me. They didn't want me to get too close. But this time they let me walk right up to them. And none of them would fly. All three of them just stood there. So I thought, okay, the way they fly, maybe that's the issue. So I clapped my hands. I said, get out of here. And when I did, two went north and one went south. And I thought, that's odd. So I didn't quite understand it. So my sister lived in an area called Port St. Lucie. And because her husband worked for NASA. So I go over to her place, and well, I say NASA, no, he worked for, it was a different company, I forget the name of the company, but still part of the NASA project. He worked on the space shuttle rocket boosters. And I go over there, and I told my sister about what had happened, and she kind of thought I was getting beside myself from the stress of, going through a separation and stuff. And she said, look, why don't you just stay here with me tonight, sleep on the couch, and you can go home tomorrow. I said, okay. So that night, after she went to bed, I knelt down and I was praying, and I said, Father, I said, I just don't understand what this means. What was meant by this? And I said, I said, Father, if you would send your angel to me, so I'll know what you mean by what this event was. I said, I'll believe it. I'll do whatever you say to do. So I went to sleep. About 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up, and the angel of the Lord came up to me. I say angel of the Lord, I don't know. I just know he's an angel, right? Not a bad one, but he's an angel. And when he spoke to me, as soon as he spoke, I knew that was the same voice that had spoke to me when I was standing there, and he said, take the shell from your pocket and behold for a sign, cast it at the two. I knew he was the same. And so he said to me, like I said, he walked up to me, and he was just like a man. He didn't look any different than most men would look, but he did have on some, what we would say be a white robe type thing, and and he had black hair. It wasn't short like mine would be, but he had black hair. And then he said to me, he said, return home, you'll be with your son. And the thing is, you have to understand, his mother was not a bad person or anything, you know, just whatever she was going through, you know, she just didn't want to stay married anymore. It was, you know, and like I said, you know, I don't know if it was postpartum depression or what it was now looking back on it, but it just got to a place to where, you know, she was having a very difficult time. And so we had agreed to go through this divorce and stuff, and, you know, but at the same time, she wanted custody of Nick. And I didn't want to give him up, but I didn't want it to be a big fight either, nothing like that. But, you know, so I, you know, I went back, and of course, I ended up having to, you know, I think the court appointed me an attorney because I didn't have the money for an attorney. And so there was a lady that volunteered to help me with my case. And I told her about this story and stuff. And I'll never forget the attorney telling me, she says, that's all real nice, beautiful testimony. She said, but you're in Florida. She said, and his mother's, there's nothing that would prevent the court from allowing her to have the child. The court always sides with the mothers in the state of Florida. So I'm like, then, no matter how much I told this testimony and how much I knew that he had said that I would be with my son, it looked like there was no hope whatsoever. And it was 2 weeks before the case was to be brought before the court. And she showed up one day at the house about 2 weeks before that. And she said, she was crying, and she said, do you want your son? And I'm like, well, of course I do. And so she gave him to me, and she turned around, she started to walk off, and I said, what's wrong with you? What's going on? And she said, don't worry about me. And then she walked away. And after she walked away, I'd have to say, it's probably a year before I ever seen her again. But when she walked away, I turned around and started to walk back into the house with Nick. And he was a little bitty guy, about 2 years old at the time. Or a year old, I forget, no, a year old. He's actually, about a year old. Or 8 months, something right in that area there. And this time, I heard a voice speak, but it wasn't audible like the first time. The voice came in my heart, but it wasn't me. It wasn't my own voice. And I heard the voice say, you doubted my word, but I made you a promise. You have your son. I felt so low. I mean, if an ant was standing there, I could have walked up with my hands standing up, walked right under the ant. I felt that low. And it was mainly because when he said, you doubted my word, but I made you a promise, and I kept my promise. That was a tough experience to learn. But you know, I think that applies to many things that we go through in life, especially when we have the Word of God itself laying before us, when we have the written Word, you know, not just the experiences we go through, but we have the promises that He's already laid down for us. And how many times do we let those promises go because we've doubted His Word? But yet He made us the promise. Whether it be salvation, whether it be healing of the body, you know, and I realize He could heal you and you'll get sick again. Sure. I get that. But I think we should really try harder. And that's me included, by the way, not just you guys. That's me included. To start standing on the promises that He gave us and believing Him. Because the greatest thing we could ever do for Jesus Christ is to believe His Word. Believe what He said He would do. Because He will do it. The difference is, a lot of the things that He said, if you can believe, all things are possible to them that believe. So we have a responsibility to believe ourselves. And That's what we need to do. That's what we got to start doing, is believing Him, especially in the hour that we're living in, the things that could be coming upon this earth, as we already know. We know that He says in His Word that fearful sights are going to come upon the earth, that man's hearts will fail for fear. How much more now should we be believing than at any other time in our lives? I hope this somehow or another touches your heart today. And God bless you for listening.